Hello, my AP Econners, here to run through our micro Unit 5 questions. And again, I know it says Unit 5. I did draw a couple concepts from Unit 1 that you're going to see, opportunity cost and production possibilities curves like you see here, and comparative and absolute advantage. So I know I didn't run through that, but it's a good review, and they're pretty simple concepts. I think you guys get the idea. So without further ado, let's run through here. So you got a graph here of a PPC. And if we are currently at point X, which means we're making 3 consumer goods, if we're going to go to 4 consumer goods, capital goods drops from 50 to 30, and so in a sense we give up, or our opportunity cost is 20 capital goods as we drop from 50 to 30 as we move along the curve. All right, here's where we can have our comparative and absolute advantage. So again, for my money, I just like to make the chart. I think it makes it a lot simpler to see. And so you got country A and country B, and they're producing wheat and corn. Okay, and so what do we know? Country A can do 20 of wheat or 10 of corn. Country B can do 8 or 8. Okay, so their opportunity cost is going to be pretty simple to identify. So remember, we're going to use the process other goes over. So for country A to produce 20 wheat, what do they give up? Well, the other goes over, 10 divided by 20. So they give up 0.5 corn to make their wheat. And if we went the other way, to make corn, 20 over 10, they give up 2 wheat to make their corn. Okay, so for country B, it's going to be simple. It's going to be 1 and 1, right? Because 8 divided by 8 both ways is 1, so it's pretty simple. And basically what we can glean from that is country A has the comparative in wheat because they only give up 0.5 corn, whereas country B gives up 1. So you always want to make your comparative advantage. So we know country A is going to make the wheat. Country B has the comparative in corn because they only give up 1 wheat versus the 2 wheat that country A gives up. And so at the end of the day, country A will make the wheat and export it. They're going to make wheat and send it to country B. Country B is going to make the corn, and they're going to import. Okay, so letter A is the best option there. Number 3, what's going to increase the demand for aircraft mechanics? Okay, this has to do with our factor markets, and the best answer here is A, an increase in the demand for air travel. That's going to increase the value of what aircraft mechanics are offering, and so by increasing the value, that increases the demand from them. That's that whole MRP equals marginal product times the price of the product. All right, here is a monopsonistic labor market here, and so what's our rule? MRP equals MRC, or MFC, it's the same thing. And so they're going to hire 20 workers. Remember though, this is key, to find wage, we do not go straight over from here. We come down to supply, and we figure out that they're going to pay $20. So I believe that's letter B. They're going to hire 20 workers at a wage of $20. Okay, so that's how you read a monopsonistic graph there. All right, this is our least cost combination rule thing here. So remember the rule: the marginal product for labor divided by the price of labor should equal the marginal product of capital divided by the price of capital. And so when it's all said and done, the last worker produces 60, and they're going to cost $12. Okay, so 60 divided by 12. So workers give you 5 marginal product per dollar. Okay, we're running out of room here, but you get the idea. So there's workers. That was fun. And then for machines, the last machine produces 6,000 units. Okay, divided by the cost of machine, which is 1,000, so 6 is the marginal product per dollar of capital. Well, we did not make the best decision because those numbers should be the same. When they're not the same, what do? You always want more of the one that's bigger. In this case, capital is bigger than labor, and so you want to increase the use of capital and decrease the use of labor. Okay, so whichever one is bigger is the one you always want to go with. Number 6, simple scarcity thing, going back to the basics. In which situation is a good not scarce? A is the best answer here. If you don't give anything up to do it, there's really no cost to it, and therefore it's not scarce. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so it wouldn't not be considered scarce in that situation. All right, here's an opportunity cost question. So Karen works part-time. She makes $10 per hour. She wants to go to a concert. She gets a ticket for $50 from a friend, and she has to take 4 hours off her job. Now that's costing her $40, okay, in earnings, plus the $50 she had to pay for the ticket, so it's costing her a total of $90. Okay, the $40 she loses from not working, and the $50 she pays for the ticket. Number 8, a perfectly competitive firm is going to continue to hire workers as long as, C, the value of what the worker is bringing in is greater than what they're costing you. As long as that's true, you keep hiring. All right, number 9, labor supply in a competitive labor market increases. You could just do a supply-demand graph if you want to see this here. Supply, demand, price, quantity. What happens? Supply increases. Okay, and we're going to see that the wage rate is going to fall. Of course, the number of workers hired is going to increase, so wage rate decreases and employment increases. Okay, so they're going to hire more workers, essentially. All right, so it's number 9. Number 10, number 9 is C. Number 10, if the market demand for a good is inelastic, and so this goes back to tax incidence. When demand is inelastic, it's the consumer who pays most of the burden of that. When supply is elastic, it's also the consumer, so we can assume that A, consumers are going to bear most of the burden of the tax because it's the consumer both times. Number 11, when a PPC is bowed out, it indicates there's an increasing opportunity cost. Why? Best answer here, imperfect adaptability of resources. Okay, it's not, again, we use the example of pizzas and robots. Making pizzas, making robots, two very different things. So to go from one to the next, you give up more and more of the other one. All right, Italy and Greece produce only 2 goods, wine and olive oil. And I know you're saying, Mers, we know about olive oil. What's this wine thing? My mom keeps telling me not to whine. Well, this is a little bit different. It's kind of like an adult beverage. Again, in a few years, you'll understand what I mean by that, but just go with it for now. Italy has the comparative advantage in the production of wine. Which of the following statements is not true? The only one that we don't know about is letter A. We have no earthly idea who has the absolute advantage in either product because they didn't give us the numbers. Okay? All we know is who has the comparative advantage. The other 4 are true statements. A, we have no idea. All right, number 13, which of the following will happen in the labor market if the price of the good produced by the workers decreases? Remember, demand, which is the same as MRP, is based on marginal product times the price of the product. Well, if either of these 2 decreases, okay, goes down, so does demand or MRP, and so the marginal, letter D, the marginal revenue product of labor will decrease. Price goes down, this number gets smaller, then this number gets smaller. All right, number 14, here's a fun one. You got to figure out, this is going to be our MRP equals MRC rule here going on, and so the first thing we have to figure out is MRP. Well, they give us total sandwiches produced, so the first thing we have to do is figure out our marginal product. Okay, so 80, 70, 50, 40, 10, negative 20, negative 30, okay, is the marginal product. Now we can figure out MRP. What is MRP? Well, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's marginal product times the price of the product, which is 50 cents. So this number is going to get halved. So 80 times 0.5 is 40, 35. So remember, this column that I'm making right now represents how much money each worker is bringing in. Okay, here this doesn't really matter because you're not going to hire them anyway. That's how much money they bring in. Now, how much do workers cost? Workers cost $20. What's our rule? MRP equals MRC. So you're going to keep hiring until this guy right here, which is number 4, which I believe is letter C. Okay, so number 14 is letter C. All right, number 15. Here's our least cost combination rule. Now, it tells us that they are employing a least cost combination, so we just have to figure out our numbers. So what do we know? The last worker hired gives 40, and the last worker costs $20 per hour. Okay, and that's got to equal the marginal product of the last capital, which is 10 units over there. There's a lot of words in there. Okay, so 40 divided by 20, of course, that's 2. 10 divided by what equals 2? 10 divided by 5 equals 2. So 15 is letter B. All right, let's look at number 16. The basic economic problem of all economies is the problem of scarcity. B is another way of saying that. Limited resources, how to use our limited resources, scarce resources, given the fact that we pretty much want it all. Okay, so letter B, the answer there. Number 17, Carlos does a van service. Not right now, of course, but in normal times he would. He charges $10 per person to get from the airport to downtown. No matter how many passengers he has, it's going to cost him $140 to do this. 19 of the seats are filled. He's got one seat left. Guy comes up and says, hey, I'll buy that last seat for $5. Should Carlos accept the offer? Well, here's the question. How much is it going to cost him to add that additional passenger? Nothing. He's already making the trip. He's already paying the $140. The additional cost is nothing, right? So there's no additional cost to that. He's being offered $5. So between getting nothing or getting something, for something that costs nothing, you'd rather get something. So the best answer here is D. The marginal benefit, the $5, exceeds the marginal cost, which is 0. All right, number 18, you've got ABC Limited selling the product in a perfectly competitive market. The price of the product is $15 per unit, so that's the price of the product. Okay, workers cost $75 each. If they hire a worker who adds 5 units, well, what's our MRP? MRP is the number of units, 5, times the price of the product, which is 15. So the MRP of that last worker is $75. That's how much the worker brings in. Now, if the worker brings in $75 and then the worker costs you $75, guess what? You don't make or lose money off that person. Your profits remain unchanged. There's no change one way or the other. All right, 19. Which of the following is most likely to increase the supply of soldiers for an all-volunteer army? Well, in this case, if there's a lower wage rate in the civilian employment, people are going to say, I can't make enough money just being a civilian, I'm going to join the army. And so it's going to encourage more people to join the army. It changes the opportunity cost. All right, number 20, this is a tax incidence graph. So what area represents tax revenue to the government? So remember, here and above is consumer surplus. Here and below is producers. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Go all the way to the original supply curve. Here and below is the producer surplus. This guy here is deadweight loss. And so that leaves our area of government revenue as, did I do this right? No, I messed up. Consumer surplus, I'm sorry, goes to the price, which is right here. I don't know why I did that. Okay, here's consumer surplus. My apologies. That leaves this area here, this rectangle, as government revenue, which is P1, P3, VT. And I believe that's letter A. Okay, so number 20 is A. My apologies on that. I'm messing that up a moment ago. 21, we are currently at, A doesn't say where we're at actually, but it says if society chooses B over A, that means we're making more capital goods. Remember, capital goods mean that we are investing more in the future so that we can increase future consumption. And so we're going to get more future consumption in exchange for less current consumption. Okay, so we're investing more of our resources, things in the future, and that's what happens when we make more capital goods. All right, number 22, you got Robert and Frank making palm leaves and coconut leaves. So again, we're going to use our other goes over to figure out opportunity cost and figure out comparative advantage. All right, so Robert, to make a palm leaf, 2 over 8 gives up 0.1/4 coconut. Frank, 5 over 10 gives up 1/2. So Robert has the comparative in palm leaves. Okay, of course we know that Frank is going to have the opposite. 8 divided by 2, he's going to give up 4 coconuts, and he's going to give up 2. So Frank has the comparative in coconuts. Okay, now we know that A and B are not true now because it says Robert has the comparative in coconuts. That's not true. He has palm leaves, and it says Frank has palm leaves. That's not true. Now, the situation where they both benefit would be D. Okay, D would be good for both of them because we know that Robert wants to make palm leaves, Frank wants to make coconuts. Well, if Frank gets normally to get a coconut, Robert has to give up 4 palm leaves. Well, if Robert's only being asked to give up 3 palm leaves, that's a good deal for him, and Frank agrees as well. Okay, so that would definitely be that. Again, Robert would not want to do this, Frank would not want to do that. If you just look at the numbers and what they have to give up, that wouldn't make any sense. Again, letter C, just looking at it from Frank's perspective, normally he gives up half of a palm leaf to get a coconut. Well, now if he has to give up 1 coconut to get a palm leaf, he's like, bump that, I'd rather just give up a half. Okay, so, and then Robert certainly wouldn't want to give up 5 palm leaves when he can only give up 4 to make the coconut. Again, I know that's a fun one, but you just got to look at the numbers and figure out who benefits where. All right, number 23, there's another MRP. If there's an increase in the demand for automobiles, it's going to raise the price of automobiles. That's going to raise the demand for automobile manufacturers. And so you're going to see the demand for auto workers increase as well as the wage rate. So letter D for number 23. All right, a firm is hiring in a perfectly competitive labor market. Okay, again, it just helps to see it. So here's our MRC. Here's our MRP. You always want to hire where MRP equals MRC, but it says they're not doing that. They're hiring somewhere where the MRP is greater than the MRC, which is the wage rate. So let's say they're hiring right here instead of hiring right here at our equilibrium. If they're hiring where MRP is greater than MRC, they didn't hire enough. They should have hired more workers. And so the answer there is B. So number 24 is B. And then lastly, here again is our least cost combination rule. Again, the marginal product of labor divided by the price of labor should equal the marginal product of capital divided by the price of capital. And the best way of expressing that is letter A. So number 25 is letter A. So there you go. Hopefully that answered some of your questions. If there's some you're still struggling with, let me know. I'd be glad to walk you through it. Otherwise, till next time, behave yourselves.